Okay, everyone. Slight technical difficulties. I think somehow the Subaru somehow
The,
spilled
the
Monster.
Subaru unreliability truck trickled into the chat.
Yeah, I had to.
Yes, our stream blew a head gasket and a ringland at the
I
same
had to
time.
replace
As
the
my friend, as
ringland
my
on my
friend said, I
PC.
think that's
So
very funny that the stream got an STI from all this STI talk.
yes,
Yes. Super accurate. Yes, the STI story it made the stream crash. Stream got the
But anyway,
STI.
we can move on now. As if anybody's back, or we can take a
Yes.
second and talk about random crap. I don't care.
So
But
Yeah.
hold on.
yeah,
So if you're
technical
joining
difficulties, we're back.
again, we're talking about sports cars that are semi-affordable, that are that are potentially in my wheelhouse for a thing. We have what have we talked about so far? S2000, Focus RS, E46 M3, and specifically '04 through '07 Subaru STI.
Yes,
which
and I
is-
apologize for not being more specific when I sent that that list to you, Chad. But that's what I really meant. Other STIs are cool, but
Yes. Yes. These STIs are cool. The ones that you're talking about taught about in
complete-
health class are not.
suck. No,
The
I'm
one
just
you
yeah,
got from
don't-
your the one you got from your
not
college
true.
professor or whatever that story was. I've already forgotten.
it's okay. She misled me too. So
I don't think it was you, but in one of the
Oh,
other
that
chats I
bitch.
have, just a reiteration, I have the short-term memory of a hamster. So, but in any
Yes.
rate,
So what's the next car on the list?
the next car
Well-
on the list is in fact a car.
It's a car. Oh, thank God.
it is. It's in the same vein. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's
Oh, interesting.
it's another car that we have experience with. Sorry, I just have to bring up the right screen here.
Is it a Lexus IS?
Yes, because when people cross shop, well, I guess it's a four-door sedan and everything like that. But no, it's an all-wheel drive. The main rival, it is an Evo. And I'm just gonna go. This
Right.
is another one where I wasn't given
Nice.
parameters, but I just went out on a limb and was like, yeah, I don't think he means the Evo 10.
No, I definitely
No.
meant 8, 9. There are cool 10s. Now let me defend my choice here for 2 seconds. We don't even need to spend as much time here because of the the crossover here. But much in the same vein as the STI, a clean stock Evo 8 and Evo 9 and Evo 9 MR, they are rapidly appreciating and they are good cars. And I
Yes.
will say this: what they have over the Subaru is the reliability and the response to mods. You can actually mod the piss out of one of these, for lack of a better term, without it having a real problem.
Yeah.
Now obviously, once you get to 900 plus horsepower, you're going to want built everything. But these things have a lot higher threshold of acceptance to mods than the STI does, because it's a traditional inline four rather than a boxer, and then all the other problems the EJ had. But they're fine, they're great. I'd say the downside is, being that both cars started out as, one, the base Impreza, kind of crappy. But I'll tell you what, the base Lancer, way crappier. And
Very much yes.
what happened is that they didn't gussy up the Evo enough to be, oh, well, this is worth its price point. But what I like about that is they spent all of their price gap on making it a performance improvement. They didn't make
Yeah.
the interior any nicer, or they didn't give it climate control, which I think is insane. But it's a nicer, it's a more performance oriented thing. And I always liked the Evo. I liked that it had the big front mount from the factory. I mean, even if it's kind of just like it's not for show. It is a front mount, but it's cool, And then instead of having a hood vent, it has a hood heat extractor. I'm a big fan of that.
Right.
I would have had a really tough time choosing between the two of these, and knowing that both of them are appreciating at kind of the same rate, it's still kind of a tough choice. And like I said, we don't need to spend as much time on it because they're such similar cars. But as far as your fun car, you could have more fun in this without worry than you could the STI.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. And my 60-second speech on this thing is the whole thing about the STI versus the Evo is, if you want a good daily, get an STI and don't mod it. If you want a performance car, get an Evo. That's always been what you need to look at, and that's all, and then it will hold true for all of time because of exactly what you said. They didn't care about the aesthetics of the car, even though it's a great looking car. Like objectively, it's a great looking car. Inside, it is bare bones Lancer, and it's not good. But performance aspect, like Hansen actually, third leg of shifting lanes, actually had an Evo 9, and I was in that car, and he's driven me in it. He drove me in it many times, and I'm like, man, this thing is good. And it is a serious weapon when you get good mods in it. And what we just said about the STI is, if you want to mod an STI, get an 800 horsepower built short block with sleeves and make 500 horsepower on it. You don't need to do that with this car. You can just make 500 horsepower, and it would be totally fine. So that's the other side of it. You don't have to like get a built car. You can just buy this car, mod it, and have some fun.
Perfect.
Yeah. Love that. Great choice. And again, appreciating, because I've seen these go for 40, 50, 60K with low mileage on it. And I think I saw one the other day on a private forum for 80 or 90 with like 4,000 or 5,000 miles on it. But like,
right.
Again,
well,
those are like the unicorns, but
it's
still, they're commanding that with insanely low mileage.
Now, I remember, so I had a friend in high school, and yes, I went to a nice high school, if this is what anybody's asking. When these were brand new, he got an Evo 8, and it was like sick. And he burned the clutch up a few times because he didn't know how to drive stick because he was a teen. And then as I think his junior or senior year, perfect car, and he decided to trade it for a Chrysler Crossfire, which is the most insane trade I think I've ever heard of anything ever. And he was like, and then he proceeded to defend it. And like, even as in high school, we were like, What are you doing? And he's like, Crossfire's actually pretty sick, dude. I'm like, I was like, you got an Evo, dude.
The only redeeming quality of the Chrysler Crossfire is that it sort of looks like a concept.
Yes,
that's the end of the list.
Like, it looks like a concept. It has a retractable spoiler. I'm sold on those two things alone, but I would not cross shop the two of those cars.
No, not at all. Oh my God.
Anyway,
brutal.
So yeah, I think we've
Absolutely
beaten the horse
brutal.
on the Evo thing.
Yes, but it's great looking. Like with 18s or 19s on it, I mean,
so cool.
Awesome car.
And the
Very
Evo 9 did get the selectable, tarmac, snow, gravel button. Even though, unlike the STI with the slidey wheel, it was just 3 LEDs, just bap, bap. It's either this, or this.
Yep.
I love that though.
Yeah. Go hard, go harder, or go hard on snow. The end.
Yeah, it was like cool. Those are the only 3 terrains that exist.
100%.
I love that.
The 4G63 is a legend, right? It's up there with your 2Js, your RBs, like as far as an engine where they're like, where I don't know, like Subaru may have designed something to handle I don't even know what, but this was like the glory era of JDM, where they're like, let's make these engines capable of withstanding nuclear fusion, and then only give them 320-ish horsepower. Or 276, if you will.
But that's what makes it good, and that's what made the list. It's an overbuilt platform that's ready to receive whatever you want to throw at it.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if you guys, saw it, but Ron, since we were talking about Hoonigan earlier, he did like a Gincana inspired where he had like a 2.2 stroker. It's making like 700 wheel horsepower. It's pretty torquey. Just like carbon fiber for days, and I'm a sucker for carbon fiber. Just awesome, and it's just it's an insane vehicle, sequential gearbox, but like arguably with all of that, like it's an insane build, all of it. But arguably the coolest thing about the car itself is that the handbrake lever is the original Hoonicorn handbrake lever that they were using in the prototype.
That's cool.
That's
very cool.
It's a really cool nod. I will say this about the Evos. It was funny growing up. I was always more of a Subaru fan. But as I got older, I became more of an Evo fan. Just I like the style of like the 8-9 Evos. They're just beautiful and they're fast as hell, man. And Greg, you can take your wife and two kids for a very uncomfortable ride in one of these too. So
again, there you go.
Yeah, I always say that the Polestar has a harsh ride. Like not even close.
No.
The Evo 8s and 9s are just literally like, oh, there's a pothole. Oh, and my entire sternum has gone up into my brain.
Well, the Focus RS also, same thing. It's like, well, it's got the mag ride. It's like, no, it's bumpy and bumpier.
Yeah, correct.
It was so.
It's not. It's not a crossover. It's not a Rolls. No. You're gonna feel everything.
Yeah, it's do you want to see the chiropractor
Very
today
good.
or tomorrow?
Yeah.
Just real quick before
All right.
Andrew, thanks for stopping in, buddy. Glad to have you. But
Good to see you, Andrew.
one thing I am noticing a trend that, while I notice this, it'll immediately end. But 3 of the vehicles so far have been that sort of rally car for the road.
I know,
true.
unintentional, but don't worry, we're getting out of the weeds here.
You know,
I was gonna say, like, I'm very interested. It's been a lot of like 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder at this
See,
point.
I thought Chad was going to shuffle this, and I sent them to him in no particular order, and we're receiving them in no particular order.
I love that.
literally-
So I
It's good.
promise,
You're literally.
we're gonna spice this up, folks.
Yeah.
I do like that you made the list and you're just as surprised as what's next. That's my favorite.
The funniest
part.
thing is,
I'm
it's the exact
yeah, no, I
same
know it's on
order.
it. And then he's like, you know, and then you got too far from the chat. He's like, I'm going to send it exactly the way you sent it. I'm like, I don't remember the way I sent it because it wasn't in like you know, ooh, what's next order. But then now I'm like, it kind of turned out to be.
Yeah, so for Andrew's benefit and anyone who just kind of randomly kind of strolled back in after we had our little technological kerfuffle, we are right now having Elliott suggest cars for Greg because Greg is in the market for a fun, sporty car, preferably a sports car, but a lot of these cars are basically really fun, you know, like the M3, the S2K is a purebred sports car, but the Focus RS this and everything. Just a fun car, and we put the little twist on it that, in Elliott's opinion, and only opinion, again, we'll do the disclaimer of he is not, he nor Shifting Lanes is responsible for any sort of financial loss you take thinking that any of these cars, but in Elliott's opinion...
You give me the Dave Ramsey preamble, basically. It's fine.
Litigation inbound.
But the caveat to these cars, in addition to being fun and sporty, is that their potential likelihood of appreciation. So,
Yes.
that sort of thing. So, we're going to move on to the next vehicle, which is completely different. To kind of lead into this, parts on that car carried over into one of the cars we currently own here at Shifting Lanes. And it's...
Oh,
We've talked about this car a lot, or the name of this car a ton. We've talked about stablemate of this, or the successor to this, but it is
do I think I know what it is?
a...
Yay!
Ooh, interesting.
I will say this:
Yeah.
the one car Elliott sent to me
I did
that had a
I
date
did
range
put-
with it, that I didn't have to kind of guess it at that. But you have
This one you have to have a date range.
I did, yeah. So, but for those of you, I guess, not watching, it is the 07 through 09 Ford Mustang GT500.
Yes.
Now, the reason I back this up, which is funny because I'm not really a Ford guy, whatever else you can tell, I've had a Mustang. It's not that I'm against them, but given the caveat, again, I'm going to keep saying this every time. Chad gave me these parameters. I'm like, man, that's tough because if it has to also appreciate, it needs to be limited production, but, you know, whatever else. These were
rare enough.
Yeah, these were really rare. I mean, this was like, you know, I really did think about putting the Terminator Mustang on here because it's more of an obvious choice. Those have already kind of shown what they're doing. And I like the Terminator kind of because it has independent rear. This live axle, fine, but this is the modern. I think this Mustang's going to appreciate because this was the you know, that 05 Mustang was the first one that got the retro thing right, and which kicked off the rest of the industry to do that because they sold like hotcakes, and they did well. I mean, you can't deny it. The 05 Mustang was an industry shaker, and when they came out with the hot version, the GT500, they did a really freaking good job with it. Carroll Shelby was still alive, you know, gave his blessing to everything like that. And if you've driven them, yes, the numbers aren't as impressive as they were, but trust me, in 07, when these came out, it was nuts. You were like, it has how much horsepower, and it's this affordable, you know, air quotes, depending on what socioeconomic caste you fell in back then.
Yeah, what was the power on these exactly?
This
wasn't like 660
no.
insanity.
So
that
was 2013 when they
right,
bumped them to where they could do 200 and it was 662. This was still 500.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, 500 in this platform is nuts.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, they do drive pretty well. they do handle decently. You don't want to take a big bank turn with a bunch of, you know, potholes in the road. You'll skipping
Right.
stuff
Or
right off the
uneven
road.
and
But
get that live axle a little disturbed.
like I said, yeah, you get yourself
Yes.
unsettled, you're going to be in a Cars and Coffee crowd video. No problem. But
Yeah,
the reason
not
it
ideal.
is because, again, clean versions of these have shown to be doing well. I don't know if they've started appreciating yet, but I think that they will, because this is the first and best example of the retro styling. Even in the auctions and stuff that I've seen, there have been people that have kind of bookended them with, I've got a 67 GT500 and I have an '07 GT500, and they're in the same color,
Right.
the same paint scheme, and those things do well together. Now, I'm not saying you should buy a 67 GT500, but if you just have a fairly mid-level example of one of these, I just don't think you can do wrong over the next few years.
And correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but this was the Shelby's return to the Mustang, was it not?
It was the name was not on there because it was SVT. Was
Right.
the thing. It was special vehicle teams. This is now it was like, oh, it's Shelby thing. It says Shelby on the back.
Yeah.
And
It's
It's interesting. I've never really had this on any sort of radar ever, because this, to your point, like, it was that first shot at the retro, and the first one that got the retro right. And I never was a big fan of like the modern retro scheme until they got into where this started. Like this one that's on screen now,
Yeah.
it's black. It's got big silver, hyper silver wheels.
Yeah, it's like the KR.
That looks
Yeah.
the KR version of this looks very, very good. Some of them are like a little bit more bland. Like the red one is a little bit more bland. The white one's very nice. Like there are certain versions of this that are insanely good. The KR being one of the, I think, probably the top end of what I would potentially pick for this. I never would have thought about this because I never potentially, like, to me, this is the start of Ford's like Viper, because that 2013 version is really okay, that one feels like a Widowmaker.
Yeah.
This, I think, was the start of that sort of insanity that the GT500 went towards like what it is now, which is this 700 plus horsepower behemoth.
Yeah.
And this was really like the beginnings of that. So I totally agree with this pick being like, once I think in the next 10-15 years, someone is going to see one of these with low mileage or even like moderate mileage and be like, that's a $50,000 to $100,000 car. Because, and you can see, I can see these things appreciating to like well north of that, because again, of that nostalgia starting to kick in. Because I don't think it's quite there yet, but you're right. These are going to be on the upturn the same way that the E46 is, because it's that early to mid 2000s era where the people that grew up with that stuff that they couldn't really get yet now becomes in that wheelhouse of like, we could potentially have this as an option for a sports car. I really wanted one when I was a kid, but I was 7. I can't buy a car when I'm 7. That's not real. No, that doesn't happen.
Right.
But it was a poster car. And I loved Mustangs because my dad loved Mustangs, or my brother loved Mustangs, or whatever. And this, I think, could be right in that same vein. And it is cool. Like, I never even thought about it, but it's cool in that sense of low production, rare, going to appreciate, clearly makes a great noise because V8 American muscle car. And it's cool. It's very cool. Like, you roll into a Cars and Coffee with a regular Mustang. Oh, cool, regular Mustang. You roll into a Cars and Coffee with a GT500, different story.
Now, the other thing I will say is, unlike the last two suggestions, I don't think these benefited from two things. The only people that could afford them when they came out were kind of boomer guys, and a lot of them put them away because they knew they're like, these are going to be collectible one day. And like, obviously these guys are going to not be around by the time they're worth more than they paid for them, but they never got cheap enough that less savory customers ruined them. The Terminators did. Terminators got really cheap at one point, so it's really hard to find a good one. These, it's not as hard to find a good one, a really, really clean one. So I do think that kind of has that going for it. A lot of these guys have held on to them since '07, and they're like, oh, this just isn't happening. And they're kind of letting them go for a song, maybe not a song, but, cheaper than you'd think. And I think it's, like I said, I think it's got the potential. I know it's not, exactly what you were thinking of, but I thought it was an interesting choice.
No, it's cool. It's also the first V8 on the list, which I like, so I'm a big fan of
Not
that.
the last.
Not the last. Yes. Good man. Give me my V8s, damn it. I love V8s. Let's go.
All right, deleting the next four cylinders.
Yep.
The last thing
I know, right?
Yes. Let's get the next one.
But real quick, the last thing I will say about this, and why I think this is once it becomes more widely known, but you could make an argument and that this car here is directly responsible for the Hellcats we got. And what I mean by that...
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
That's true.
Without a doubt.
Is one, it was supercharged, crazy power. Like, this is awesome. Number one, its successor made even more horsepower. And its direct successor has been quoted by the people at Mopar at the time of being... we can't have this. We need to make something better, and that better was the Hellcat. So,
yeah,
this
was the start of the modern American horsepower.
And like I said, I tell you what, if you do drive, even today, if you get behind the wheel of a good 07, 08 GT500, you are not going to say, "Man, this thing's a slouch." Like, it's still fun.
We talk about it all of the time. And that's sort of that perfect horsepower that isn't ridiculous, but enough to make you feel like it's really fast. Is 500.
5.
Yeah, it is across the board. It is.
But that is a perfect segue into a vehicle that very much so.
Wait. Let me guess. E39 M5.
You are so very good at
I'm not going to put that. Even though
I was thinking V8 close to 500 because it's 400.
Even though I've got all goosed up because I'm driving my E39 right now, it's not on my list. I like him.
I thought it would be.
No,
interesting.
It's not for you.
He doesn't want you to soil the brand. Is basically what he's saying. he wants his to.
I don't want Gregson's name on my glorious E39.
It's like, oh, look at this thing. Wait, why is it plummeting? Oh, wait, Greg bought one.
Man, I got to sell mine now.
No, your logic and reasoning and thinking about what the next vehicle is, Greg, couldn't be.
Oh, he knows what it is.
Further from the truth. It is. We are now going live to something completely different.
Lotus!
It is a Lotus Elise.
Lotus, British.
No, tell me your thoughts before I defend it, honestly, because I can defend this thing all day long.
So specifically the Elise, correct?
The Elise, not the Exige, because the Exige is a little outside of the price range.
Yeah, so I've looked into Exiges and they're, crazy. There's one on Instagram that's like it's all Exiged up. It's lowered. It's got tire stickers, and I'm just like, oh,
no, it's so cool.
Like you got the Homer Simpson drool going on. It's so
that almost
awesome,
made it into last night's reel, by the way.
I put a Homer Simpson drool into a reel recently, and I'm just like, yeah, it works. But this is an interesting one because they are literally just go-karts for the road, and they're tiny and they're cool and they're exotic looking and they're like baby 911s, but they're Lotuses, so they're horribly unreliable, but they're just cool. The thing is, like, Elises are one of those that you never think of until you see one and get in one and you're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so my thinking here was, and this is of the list, I started 2 cars on the list, which didn't translate into the way I sent it to them, but they bolded, whatever. Anyway, I started them when I originally made the list. This is one of them, because this is one of those, all right, this fits the bill to a T of car that you want, right in that 40K range, guaranteed to appreciate. I was skeptical about these cars, and also when I did my review of it, which thank you, Chad, for including like 2 or 3 pictures of the one that I had. That's one. There you go.
Nice.
So when I did it, I was
that
like,
so
man,
good.
I always kind of wanted one of these. So I Turo'd one for like a week, and I was like, man, because I knew all that, the facts when you go to drive a car like this. It's uncomfortable. It's bumpy. It doesn't really have that much power, but it doesn't weigh anything. And I was thinking, like, I want to drive one of these and get it out of my system so that way I don't ever want one again. And I kind of thought that's what I was doing. I thought I was doing the mom making his, their kid smoked a full pack after catching up with one because it was like, you need to stop. And so, like, I was like, I'm going to do that for myself. But I drove it, and I'm like, I mean, within the first couple of hours, I was like, I rented this hoping to make me stop wanting one, and I'm like, I couldn't want one more.
Yeah.
Especially as a not, if it's not your only car, like, I would never in my wildest dreams say, dude, daily drive one. No, it's silly. But as a fun car, I had more fun in that thing in like short bursts than I have had in a lot of other cars. And believe it or not, especially for the price range, I got a ton of attention even in Scottsdale, which remember in Scottsdale, it's McLaren's, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis every intersection you go to. Now, given nobody knew what it was, but
Right.
I got a lady asking me what kind of Ferrari it was, and it's like,
But it's unique, and that's the thing.
it looks special. So one of the things that I look for in a fun car, I mean, not everybody cares what everything looks like, but I think a sports car should look really cool. I like to elicit excitement in others too, which is like I said, my Maserati looks like a Hot Wheels car. It doesn't need to, but guess what? People get stoked about it, and like I like that. There's a lot of other people that want things in charcoal heather. Don't notice it. Let's not look at it. Don't look at it. And you're like, it's really special. And you're like, well, I've blacked it all out and I've removed all the badges. It's like, no, if it's special, like to pass on car enthusiasms, this is the way to kind of do it. Like it is literally a baby exotic. But the thing is, it's legitimately fun. Now, the other reason the one I drove, also this checks my box, by the way, because I'm looking at the one on the screen. The top comes off. Open air motoring is always more fun.
True.
They're no less rigid than not having the top come off because it's the same platform as the Exige. In fact, the Exige roof comes off too, just nobody ever does it.
True.
There's a supercharger. There's like an Edelbrock, I think, supercharger kit for these things.
Yep.
The one I drove
which is the one they use on modern Lotuses.
Yeah.
The all Edelbrock stuff.
I'm saying the one I drove was an Elise supercharged. So, like, it's not like it was lacking for power. Trust me, I thought it was fun as crap, even on the straightaways. It has this cool.
Oh yeah.
If you watch my video on it, the proximity from the steering wheel to the shifter is like it feels like a race car. I mean, I have just had so much fun with this. And like I said, as a sports car, for a fun car, where you're like, hey, I'm only going to drive this Saturdays on nice days. This is the kind of car you want. It feels like an occasion every time you're in it. Your neighbor's not going to have one. Everyone's gonna wonder what it is. Like it's the perfect mix of everything that you cannot get for anywhere close to that price range normally. And like I said, it feels special. It feels great. You could drive it everywhere. And I do want to counter your point. With the Lotus unreliability. No, watch my video. The Lotus parts of it don't work, but the engine does because it's a Toyota engine.
Right. Yeah, so, the engine works, but everything else around it fails. But the engine, you're fine.
Right. But like I said, on mine, the grill was falling off, and if you go to open the, I guess the Brits would call it the bonnet. I mean, I'm not kidding. It flexed around to the point where, like, on the video, I'm like, I'm just lifting it straight up, and it's like flimsy, and it was hilarious. But the whole experience was so much fun that I'm like, I can't wait to have one of these. And now I'm sad because my original video was, this is the most fun you can have for around 30K, and I'm like, no, they're beyond that now. Like, they've appreciated since I've made a video on them. And like I said,
which was not long ago.
It checks all of the boxes on, I want a fun car.
And this is a really interesting one because when you hear car enthusiasm, you're like, oh, Miata is always the answer. Well, this is the exotic Miata because it's small, it's lightweight, it has insanely good shift action, it has great driving dynamics, it's mid-engine, it's exotic looking, nobody knows what it is. Like, and one of my attainable, well, I guess not anymore, but dream cars is the Evora. Now the next one is the Emira, but like the Evora GT, when it came out, I'm like, oh man, I really wish I could have that. Like, you couldn't find one for under 100K. The whole thing is like, it's exotic and cool and totally off the beaten path. And it's part of the reason why I like Volvo is because they're just more interesting. Like, this is a more interesting car than a comparable $50,000 M3. Like, if you pull up, and you shouldn't you should buy a car for what you want, right? You shouldn't buy a car for what other people think. You should, but if you pull up to a Cars and Coffee in an M3, people, again, it's the same argument with like, you pull up to a Cars and Coffee with a regular Mustang. Oh, cool, it's a Mustang. You know, definitely a person I want to talk to. I like Mustangs. But if you pull up to a Cars and Coffee with a KR GT 500 07, people are gonna be like, ooh, okay, what is that? Same thing with this. You pull up to a Cars and Coffee in an Elise, and people are gonna be like, I've literally never seen one of those in person. I'm gonna go talk to that person. Like that's cool, and like you can start conversations with it, and that was really interesting when I owned the Aston. I met a friend, his name is Nick, who owned an Aston because Doug owned that one, which was really cool. And we went on a couple of drives, and we're just on Route 10 here in New Jersey, and this guy in a truck comes screaming up and is like yelling out the window at Nick, what are these cars? They're so cool. I've never seen them before. And I'm like, this is like the coolest experience. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. I'd imagine people that own this car have that almost all the time.
Oh,
and you get into really cool
concept?
Car conversations with people that are interested in cars that wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity otherwise to see or even talk about a car like this. Lightweight, British made, exotic sports car. No one's ever seen it before. No one knows what it is. Right. This is like the perfect choice for this list because I never even would have thought about this.
That's why I started.
It's such a great choice.
It's right there in the range. You couldn't have more fun, and I went in wanting to hate it, and I drove it a lot, and I'm like, I love it. Now listen, you're gonna look silly getting in and out of it every time. There's no good way.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, you have to like fall in and out of it. It doesn't matter. It's so cool. Like, so, trust me. I fully back this one. This has my Elliott seal of approval. I mean, I guess they all do as my list, but
I got to make a stamp. Alvis approved.
That's right.
This was like like I said. I only starred 2 of these entries. To Chad.
Wait, so which were starred? This one and what was the other one?
This one, and we haven't gotten to the other one yet.
Oh, there's another one. Is that the last one?
No.
There's.
Oh no! Yes, more cars. Yeah. I love this.
It's quite extensive.
This is very good. This is. I'd say this is 10 out of 10. This is. I would say the best suggestion yet because it was so unexpected.
And they are actually not only holding value. They've been the same price since they came out. But
I was gonna say they've bottomed since for 20 years.
But like I said, even since I made my video on it, now people are like, I'm getting comments. It's an old video, but people are like, these aren't 30K anymore. And I'm like, well, they were.
Look at the published.
When I made the video, they were. Shut up.
And I'm like, guys, look at the date. Okay, I'm sorry.
When did you make that video?
A couple of years ago. I don't know. I sent them both to Chad. I was like, here, if you want to grab any screenshots or whatever from.
Oh, okay.
Because
like 2021.
I took it to an all Porsche Cars and Coffee, and it did get a crap load of attention because it was like, dude, how much was this? Where did you get this? And it was like,
that's cool.
It's perfect.
I do love that. This is best suggestion yet. I love the V8, but I love the uniqueness. I have a soft spot for Lotus because
it feels like the supercharged Elise with the top off. Oof, it's really up there.
It sounds amazing. Now I kind of want one. So you hit the nail on the proverbial head, I would say.
Well, thank you.
Nice.
It's a good thing your family's short, Greg.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm 5'6".
I did make my 6'4" friend drive it though. He was able to do it. He was not comfortable, but he could.
Sean, I was just gonna say, Sean in chat said, "I'm 6'3". When I sat in when I couldn't turn the wheel."
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, his knees were, up to his cheeks,
up in his chin.
But he was physically able to drive the car. Now, I don't think he wants one by any means, but
yeah. This is for people of my stature. 5'6" is a good height for this car.
Oh my gosh. At any rate, the next car is probably, I will say this, it's the one car, and I'm not trying to say like all the other cars, like I really do like the S2000s. I love that high revving engine kind of a thing. But this next car is probably, of all of them, the one I would get.
Ooh, interesting.
And your only hint, Greg, is I almost did. Because it is a C606.
Oh. I was just going to be like, it's got to be a C6 then. Nice. Good choice.
Yeah. So let me do, obviously you want a C6. I know it's on your list. And the regular C6 has a V8 too. But you can get earlier Z06s for less because, again, the caveat here was likely to appreciate. And here's the deal. This was one of the first cars that ever gave me like butterflies, but given when they're brand new, about being like, this is insanely fast. This feels like feels like you're riding a 600cc, crotch rocket, but in a car. That's good speed. Right. And 505 horsepower, 7-liter, V8. I mean, these are amazing. The only reason that I specifically honed out the Z06 on this list is the likely to appreciate, because obviously they're limited production. Obviously, they're all stick shift. There's a lot of things that cause it to be more in that, likely to appreciate thing. Now, if I just said, under 40K or around 40K, a Grand Sport would have been great too. But the Z06 is great. Now, there's a couple of things you have to look out for, but they're known. And guess what? The community is out there. I mean, people that own these cars obsess over them. Z06s are also way less likely to have fallen into, like I said, less than savory hands over the years. And like I said, actually, what we talked about earlier, that 500 horsepower mark is right there with how fast a thing should be. But unlike the Mustang with that same amount of horsepower, this thing has meats on the back. It puts it down. And bogies. I mean, I know that I just sounded like an old person right then, but I'm telling you,
but you're right.
I've driven more of these than I can count on one hand, and every time I'm always like, "Yep, I love it." Every time, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love it."
You put this up again. You put this up against an 07 GT500, and this is going to utterly destroy that car every single time.
Matter, and I remember that being the thing. But fantastic cars. I'm a big Corvette guy. I know it's no secret to anybody who follows my channel. So a Corvette was going to be on the list. But it's also the last naturally aspirated Z06 that will, not ever exist because there's currently one. But you know what I mean. It's the last of the traditional.
No, it's the last one.
Cross-plane crank, old school push rod V8. Z06s that will ever exist because they really can't go back to this. And like I said, they're great cars, and I'll tell you what, as they got later in the years with the mag ride and everything like that, I'm telling you for a fact, Denali from that same date range rides worse than a Z06 on tour with mag ride.
Which is crazy.
They can do everything, and they can get damn near 30 miles a gallon on the highway. I'm like, they can literally do everything. And they have
this is the daily driving sports car that you kind of want to get.
They're amazing.
Yeah. This again, also 10 out of 10, just because one, it's on my list, and two, also the aftermarket for these are crazy. Not that I would go insane modding as a C6 Z06, but again, what we were talking about when the stream kind of went down was the same thing with the Subaru. You can do suspension mods to this. Mag ride's great, but if you really wanted to, and if there is any body roll you wanted to take out, any chassis dynamics you wanted to take out, you can go with a full coilover set and still obviously go back to a stock setup without it being it's minimally invasive at that point. You're not throwing a tune and a supercharger on it and then be like, oh well, I went back to stock. But then you've severely altered the value of the car from a performance standpoint, to where the appreciation value is a very different conversation. You can do other things. You can throw a carbon fiber wing on this, and it's not going to do anything to the value, because certain Z06s came with a factory carbon fiber wing. They had that in the later versions.
Right.
There's a carbon fiber front lip from factory. There's other there's skirting you can get. There are things you can do to this that would make it your own, without horribly tanking the value of the car, which is cool. Which is also something that it's in mind in that point, because we're car guys. We want to mod our cars. We want to make them our own. Having a car that's just stock is cool, and it's great, but I'm not sure if I could humanly do that. So, but the biggest gripe with me is I hate the C6 Z06 headlights. Well, great. There's a C7 kit that you can literally just plug in, and you can keep the old ones. And if you want to sell it, you can just plug them back in. But again, it's that mod that you can just go back, and it's not a big deal.
Right.
So it's a great platform for that. It has the horsepower. You don't need more horsepower with this car. It's light enough.
Yes,
it's
you do.
fast enough. It makes a screaming noise.
And
Like,
when the valves
shut
open
up,
it
Chad.
actually does sound really good. I mean, it's like it
Right.
does both. It like this is right around the era of when cars got good at doing both.
Everything.
Like before then, it was like you had to put an exhaust on a car before it sounded good because everything was too choked up.
Yeah.
This was like, hey, you know, after 3,500 RPMs, it actually sounds perfect, and now it was required on the highway too. You're like, that rules. And to your point, you know, later the different Z06 models that came with carbon fiber lips and spoilers, yes, later on down the line, they even made the Z06 carbon, which not even the limited version. You could carbon option one, and you could get carbon ceramics, a carbon fiber hood.
Yep.
And like the thing was perfect. Like I said, my buddy's dad he was like his second C6 Z06, and he got a carbon, and I was like, this is the car. And it was, you know, just a fantastic platform overall.
I think I mean, if the Elise was a 10 out of 10, this is a 10 out of 10 from what I previously.
This is my second start car for you, by the way. So of the two.
I mean those two are probably the two that I would say are at the top of the list. Then
It's at the top of mine.
Well, perfect.
Not surprised,
I mean,
Mustang owner.
No, everything. Corvette always had a thing about being the American sports car, and we're going to do it the American way. And while we're doing it, we're going to kick all of the Europeans straight in the junk. And
Right, you're selling me on it more.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Super
That's-
accurate.
I was like, I'm already here.
you know,
Yeah,
it's
keep
just it's a phenomenal piece of kit. Like I remember the Top Gear episode where they reviewed this and they were putting it up against either a 550 or a 575 Ferrari, and it did everything performance wise the same for like.
It's yeah.
I mean, the only thing
It's
that
always
lets
been the bang for the buck.
you know, the only thing that lets it
best
down
bang
is
for the buck.
is the
Specifically in Z06 trim. Even now, even with Z06s being so, we have to remember. So like when these came out, they're like 70 grand. New Z06s are 140 grand. If you know, by the time you get used to it. But the thing is, for 140 grand, you're still beating $500,000 cars.
Oh yeah.
Like you cannot beat the bang for the buck of the Z06, and I think that was GM's goal from even 2002 or 2001 on.
Yeah, and this was the
They
first
always
one.
have been throwing it to the Europeans. Like you can do it better for cheaper. The problem is, at the end of the day, you have a Chevy.
Yeah,
But
this was the first one where they started to question: is the Corvette a supercar?
yes,
Because the C5 Z06 was very good, and it's still to this day one of the best performance values you can buy. This is also one of the best performance values you can buy. Still, even at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. But
Right now,
this was the first one this was the first Corvette where you could legitimately, the first mass produced, not insanely short production like ZR1 C4s, where you can be like, is this a supercar? And the line was very blurred.
Yeah, because the numbers are there.
This is destroying supercars, to Chad's point, like a 575, a supercar GT like a 575 from Ferrari for a third the price, or even a quarter the price. It's a very insane car for the money.
And they've always been, to your point, they've always benchmarked them against cars that are way, technically out of their league.
Yeah.
And I mean, there you go. I mean,
yeah, true.
And there's something this has that if that GT500 we looked at was the Ford Viper, this has it even more because the Ford was a small engine. This is a 427.
Yeah,
and that
it's big.
What I
boy.
like about
And it's a
this
short,
at the
small
time,
block.
And my friend made a good point about this back in the day. Ford had this big touting, and I don't mean to step on your feelings as a Ford guy, Chad, but they had this big thing. It was our most powerful engine ever, in the GT500 going out, going nuts. And they needed a supercharger, and then GM came out with a naturally aspirated version that made a little bit more horsepower. And they didn't even really say, suck it, Ford, which they could have.
Yeah.
They were just like, they were like, oh, yeah, also we can just do this naturally aspirated. No big deal.
Cubes.
I do love that.
Supercharge this thing.
No, that's just to piggyback off that real quick. That's like the misconception with me in my car is that I'm a quote unquote Ford guy. I'm a quote unquote I like cool car guys. And
Yeah.
To that end, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but to reiterate, if we did, I only got the Mustang because this was a couple, like, $3 to $4 grand out of reach. This was the original car I was going to get, was the C6 Z06. Because the short version of that story is I wanted a Corvette or a Mustang because those were the two cars my dad owned long before I was even a thought. But he had a 59 Corvette and like a 65 Mustang. So, and he always talked more about, like, you know, the Corvette was his
years.
His Corvette was always the thing. I mean, and he modded the crap out of it. But those were the two vehicles, so I wanted a Corvette because he was a Corvette guy. And this was at the point when he was just starting to get sick, so I wanted to kind of give him some of that rekindling of his youth with his cars and stuff, with what I like and things like that. But unfortunately, these were just a little too expensive. It's another case of, hey, I like that car, I should get it. It's a little too expensive for me. And then like 3 years later, they're $10,000 to $15,000 more expensive. It's like, damn it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But
good segue into the appreciation value of this, because they will continue to go up because this doesn't exist anymore, nor will it ever.
No. It's so cool. So
100%. And again, it's
I don't know why I feel bad now. I'm like tooting my own horn there. I'm like, it's so cool. Good choice.
Good choice, me.
And then we go back to.
I'm excited about my
smart.
own choice so much that I'm complimenting.
And then we fast forward.
Elliott's just gonna get off stream and go in the mirror and be like, that was a good list.
I know. I'm like, good one, dude. Elliott, nice. You nailed it on that subject.
Yeah, that is headline on those social medias is tore rotator cuff because of the Shifting Lanes Garage podcast.
Oh man!
But no,
all right. So how many more cars do we have?
We have two more.
All right, let's.
I know where
rip
we're on
through
the
'em.
list now. I've straightened it out.
Okay. So
The man who
you're
created
back
the list
on it, and
has-
you know which ones.
The first version of the list could have been just mumbo jumbo to me. Then now I know where we're at.
The next one is a car you've driven, Greg. It's a car I was shocked to see on this list, to be perfectly honest, given the parameters.
I know this is the only one he said, "Are you sure?" too.
Oh man, I like the. Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
And that's why I was like, listen, I looked. It is possible.
All I can see is the John Cena meme of him like crashing through. Like, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
That's all I can see right now.
It was a.
Oh man! All right.
It was a car we were all kind of like super excited for when it first came out. It was one of those cars in Shifting Lanes' history that when we got it, it was like, oh my god, we got this. And the last hint, which should give it away,
AMG?
is that you and Hanson did a joint video together with it.
Oh, Alpha 4C.
That is correct, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and it's interesting that we bring this one up before Ellie, you go into why you picked it. Was the whole thing about the Lotus Elise was people go nuts over it because they don't know what it is. When Hanson and I did a video on this car, we pulled over in Rockaway, New Jersey, just at the mall. I forget, we were either getting Starbucks or to like bring me back to my car or whatever. And this little kid came up with his mom, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's the coolest car I've ever seen. I've never seen a car like this." But it's that same sort of like youthful exuberance that an Elise brings out. It's that same kind of like feeling. And the kid sat in the car. It like made his life. And I'm like, this has that same sort of pull and appeal because it's exotic looking. It's crazy. It's got like a carbon tub. And I'm like, I was wondering because you put the Elise on, I'm like, oh, I wonder if a 4C's coming up because it's very in that same vein and very similar.
Dude, you nailed it on the head. That's why I kind of picked it, because it's the most modern Elise that there is.
Right.
In fact, I mean, in some ways they out Elise the Elise. With the carbon monocoque and everything else. And the thing is, I mean, yes, some enthusiasts will hem and haw over the lack of a manual, but the dual clutch does really well under full chat. And it's right there. It's like I said, I've loved these because of that. It was like, oh my God, they made the Elise again.
Yeah, it as someone who's driven this car, a manual that would be amazing. You don't need it.
You don't need it. Yeah, no, it's good.
Insane how good this car handles and how it feels on a back road. It's nuts. Right. Absolutely. That you have to experience it.
You nailed it. Like I said, the reason it made the list is because it's an Elise. But
yeah. It
even
really is
more,
a great
even
point.
more exotic. But the thing was that Chad question was like, "Are you sure those are in the 40s?" And yes.
Yeah.
So if you hop on Auto Tempest, no, it's not a lot of them, but there's more than one that were 42, 43, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty
And-
darn good car for that. And guess what?
And-
They didn't sell well. So, like in my
No.
opinion, I think that is going to make them be
100%. And it's an
very
old
powerful.
alpha. So old alphas always go up. Like
Right.
they always do. Like
But
even if it's
also
just
good
bare bones
looking,
ones,
really
they
good
always
looking,
they
good
always go up.
driving little Alpha, and it's got to be the
Yeah.
newest car that doesn't have power steering that exists.
I think you're right. Yeah, because I was
Honestly.
just like, I remember like wrenching on this thing in the parking lot. I'm just like, man, I wonder what this was like in the 60s and 70s when this didn't exist. Like,
Oh yeah, well, you
the
also
power
had,
steering.
that wheel that's this thin. You got
Yeah, wrenching on it, and I'm like, man, power steering really is something. So, this is
and then
this is
again,
again 10
to
out of
re-ask
10.
the Lotus thing. That's why I think it makes the list. It's gonna appreciate. It would be such a good car for the fun things. You have a daily.
Yes.
You have a fun car. That is the perfect fun car because you don't want to daily it.
No,
It's an
never.
occasion every time you get in it. It's an occasion to you and everyone around you, in fact.
That's right. Because again, it's one of those things nobody knows what this is.
So like I said, I should have started this one when I found out that it was possible. Like I kind of was like at the same time, I was like, these are still in the 50s. And I was like,
Like,
no.
maybe I should get one of these.
I know. I'm like, really, this is pretty freaking good.
But you're right. And it's interesting you put this on the list because I've actually been tracking the prices on these because I do love this car. Ever since I drove it, I'm like, this thing is nuts. And everyone knocks it. Oh, it's a 4-cylinder engine. Oh, it's only 227 horsepower. Like, yeah, and Miata's only 181, but Miatas are
really
one of the best sports cars of all time. Like, you don't need power to have fun. Power is great, and I want power. Trust me. C6006, yeah, give me some of that.
Boom. Yeah.
This thing is just in the same vein, but it's just a different animal in that sense. And again, you have to experience it. It is a modern Elise, and it really is one of those cars where you just kind of have to be like, okay, oh, fine, but you have to get in it and experience it. And I've been watching these prices. They're around like 42, 43. They haven't moved. From the 40s, they've bottomed. They've been bottoming for 6 years, 7 years, even before COVID. Like when all the craziness happened and all the prices went up, these stayed in the 40s. They've always been in the 40s. It's nuts.
As a service thing, like you can take these to just your Chrysler dealer. You
Yeah.
bring this into your Dodge dealer, and you're like, hey, I need an oil change, and it's not like a freaking ordeal. Like if you bring in a normal exotic. Given probably might be to them, but it's possible.
Yes. Yeah, because they do have the tooling to do it.
I'm like,
why does this thing have
had
2 camshafts? But
like I have to think about it. We don't have a Ferrari dealer, so it's like,
Right.
so you could maybe get a Gallardo, but you have to take it to the Audi dealer, and even they are going to be like, oh, yikes, this is a whole thing.
You have to really think about it.
But like, I've got a guy, Tyler Potter, also has a YouTube channel. It's like, dude, I have no problem. He give him an Alpha, and he's like, boom, no problem.
Yeah, this is a great shout. 10 out of 10. Really good one. So I'd say, I mean, C6, Elise, and this are probably on the same footing. They're all great suggestions.
I like
again,
the chat saved the best for last, even though it was unintentionally my order that I sent it to. Maybe, but.
And the last one, the Jaguar F-Type.
No. One thing I should point.
Super unsurprising for the one that I've been talking about for the last 8 years of my life.
I know. I feel like after all this, you're like, yeah, cool. I'm still gonna get the F-Type.
But
no. Honestly, like that's the thing though. Like I love the F-Type, but it's you when you get back in and drive cars, it changes your mind. Like F-Type is beautiful, but couple of these are mind-changing cars for sure.
I definitely rubberneck at a 4C every time I see one.
Oh, 100%.
Every time I 4C one.
That was just like a 4Runner.
That was a 4Runner joke. But, another thing with a 4 in it. What is up tonight?
Yes.
Yeah,
Get
you've
those
had
jokes
a
in.
bunch
I love
of.
it.
You've suggested a bunch of 4-cylinder cars. There have been 3 cars with
I know, now it's like,
4-wheel drive.
all of my fans are gonna be like, "Do you think that 4-cylinder cars are the coolest cars that are out there?" I'm like, "No, hang on." Stop that window.
I mean, if you get a I've always said to Greg for years, I've been this going on years, and I mentioned to you and when we were talking about this, but I think the coolest car Greg could get is to go to Copart, find an Elise with a blown engine, and swap a white block into it.
I know he did talk about that. I was like, that's a super cool suggestion.
You know that
it's pretty awesome. Like an Elise with a white block, like a 300 horsepower white block, would be bananas.
I would freak out if I heard an Elise making those noises.
Same. Man,
I
need to hit the lottery.
Oh my god! And an Elise.
All right, buy Powerball tickets. Noted. All right. So
anyway,
best for last. Interesting. I've
I wouldn't
because of like what's been on the list. I have no idea what's coming.
Right. So real quick, before we get into the next one, I feel almost obligated to say that if you combine the power of the last two cars, remember C6 Z06 and the Alfa Romeo 4C, you're still about 60 horsepower less than the Mustang.
See,
he's not throw that in there, didn't you?
Remember.
I'm not a Ford guy.
Yeah,
I just appreciate
not
awesome.
a Ford guy,
the
but
LS7 is arguably Chevy's greatest engine in my opinion, and I want one in my life really badly. But there is no denying that the Coyote is arguably the best.
The Coyote's great. No one's ever gonna knock the Coyote. I don't think.
And that wasn't say the Ford. That was more of the roughly 8 to 820 crank horsepower I deal with on a daily basis. At any rate, now to something without that.
Shut up. Get on with it. Go away.
That's my favorite joke, is that Greg and Hansen combined still don't even come close. All of their cars,
yes, we have two cars, and we have two cars, and you have no trunk space, so shut up.
I don't know. I went grocery shopping today, and it handled it fine. I can fit golf clubs back there, brother. A child seat doesn't fit back there. Who's really winning at that one?
Yeah, solid point. Point taken.
Nobody loves me. The last car on this list is another one I've considered owning, but there's just a lot of cars above it. It's also a car we have recently spoken about, you being interested in. It is not a V8.
The Kia Forte.
GT.
Kia Forte. Yes, 2% of which are manual and sold in the U.S. Shockingly, I know that stat, and that's an accurate
fact. I won't even fact check you on that. It sounds right.
No, it's actually.
I made a short form of like what manuals are offered and what are the percentages, and some manufacturers didn't report, but yeah, Kia reported Kia Forte GT 2% manual take rate in the U.S. Accurate statement.
Nice.
Oh, interesting. The next
random fact car whipped out of absolutely nowhere.
Does not have a V8. It does not have a four-cylinder. It is the
V70R.
Specifically, Elliott's V70R.
It's
Elliott trying to convince you to buy mine again.
Yeah, I put this on the list because please buy this from me.
Believe it or not, they've skyrocketed in values, and like it's just taking you for a ride.
Yeah.
No, but you were actually very close in your Kia guess because it is not a Kia Stinger. It's a BMW M2.
Oh, yes. We did talk about this recently. Go. Sell me, sir.
Honestly, a great car. So the M2 is the closest successor to the 46 M3 that in modern car mode. I've driven them. They're fantastic. I love them. It doesn't have the Ford Focus RS problem of being too bumpy and too, harsh or anything like that. You still have all the luxuries of a BMW, and I'm telling you, it was the closest I felt to an E46 M3 as far as perfect handling, perfect mix of power. In fact, the competition, which is still in the wheelhouse of price here, it really does have, even for Flatland, Kansas here. I was like, this would not bore me on a daily basis. And given we're not looking for a daily, it was, hey, this is fun. Now they can be had in stick shift or they can be had in dual clutch. And honestly, I wouldn't knock either choice. I know enthusiasts out there get their panties in a bunch about them. My argument is I actually kind of like the dual clutch because the way these things are tuned is they're meant to get in boost and stay in boost, which is what the dual clutch does best. But obviously the fun with the 6-speed is, and the thing spools back up. It's fun. But the thing really comes alive in the dual clutch form, and those are obviously the cheaper versions. Now, the reason it made the list is because all of those reasons. But if you were to find a 6-speed that wasn't horrifically abused, which none of these were, because again, they've never come to the point where they've been, clapped out beyond belief. The 6-speed is always going to be more valuable because there's no reason they should. God, I don't want to get attacked. They shouldn't have made it in the first place, and they probably won't ever do it again. So it's kind of a good car, and trust me, it is plenty of fun. On the weekend.
This is a really interesting choice because I did drive one of these at a press event back in 2018 or 2019, and man, did I not have the most fun of the day in that car. Like that blue one that's on screen right now, chef's kiss. It is like you can modify them. They're gorgeous.
Oh, and they respond so well.
Excellent. They respond well to mods. They're fantastic cars just from the factory. And again, this is one of the ones you can shove car seats in the back. They do have 4 seats. So they're a 2-door car, but like they have 4 seats. So it is an option. And again, this is to your point, this is more of a purebred modern E46. Like this is literally when I got in this and I started to drive it, and then Hanson and I took a drive in it as well. I was like, oh man, this feels like Chad's car. Like because I remember picking up Chad's car, and riding in it, and I'm just like, ooh, okay, this is a modern E46. You're 100% correct. Like, and it's a great, like you could this is a car you could daily.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to. Like if for some reason your daily is down,
E46
you have
with modern amenities.
Right.
But
you have Apple CarPlay. You have
still fun though.
Right.
Like you get in one of these and you're like, all right, let's have a time.
Yeah. And if you compare this to the F80 M3, it's not even a comparison. You get this.
Yeah. Especially you pigs and everything like that. This was like
correct.
Again, the last kind of fun car that BMW made.
Yes.
Obviously the CS version is so sick, but that's out of the,
that's like 80, 90.
But because of that, that's going to be the CSL of its day. The M2 and the M2 Comp or whatever I think they're going to go up because it's going to be the last one of these that BMW made. But unlike the E46, it does have creature comforts and like I said, modern power and like I said, modern transmissions. Like in your E46, you either have the SMG or the 6-speed. This you have a dual clutch or a 6-speed. You literally cannot go wrong. Like one is not worse than the other. It's you can afford the dual clutch and the 6-speed's still a ton of fun. It's just a good car, and I would not kick one of these out of my third car garage ever. Like I think it's a really decent car, and honestly less hard to find in the 40s than a 4C.
Yeah, that's actually true because they're plentiful. There's way more of them.
Yeah,
and not for the appreciation value of this because eventually these will go up. They're still too modern to be like, oh yeah, these are going to go up right now. But like if you hold on to them long enough, then you're going to see that return in 10, 15 years because the E90s are about to have their day. And this is going to be the next one on top of that because I foresee that F80s won't appreciate. Like I think that's going to be the M3 that doesn't.
The
G80s will because they're nuts. But that's like 40, 50 years from now. The E90s are about to. In the next 4 years, E90s are going to start becoming unattainable because they're the only M8. They're the only V8 M3. They are the only ones. They're the first ones with a proper dual clutch and a manual offered. And there are certain editions that are very low run, like the Lime Rock version, like the orange and Lime Rock versions.
Oh, yeah, but also the E90 specifically, the 4-door.
Right.
So few.
And they stopped in 2011, and they kept making the 2-door for another 2 years. So the E90 specifically is going to be even more rare.
I'm saying specifically that one's the one.
Exactly. So, but these I can see in that same vein where it's going to be the last, like you said before, like it's going to be the last version of something that BMW makes that in 10, 15 years, people are going to start clamoring for this. And they will appreciate.
Yeah, for why I made the list for me. Might not appreciate tomorrow, but it's gonna. This was the last. This was the E46 revival that
yes,
they never saw coming, and then and then it went away again.
Exactly.
And honestly, fill in the blanks, safety regs, power expectations, everything else. It just makes it's going to make it impossible, which makes this thing rare and desirable. We're not rare yet, but
rare enough to
It's not
be a want down the line. Yeah.
So there you go. I think that's the last of the list.
Very, very big applause. This list was absolutely fantastic because there's so much on here that I had never even considered or even thought of.
Mention, there was a bunch of stuff that didn't make the list.
You can swear. It's fine.
Like Camaro ZL1.
That's a good shout.
Else. Like those are good cars. Like, and those are going to as well. But it's like if you just have to kind of filter it down, this is kind of what it is.
Yeah. Like if you had to choose between Camaro ZL1 and a C6 Z06, so like I'd probably take the C6.
I'm gonna go C6 Z06 every day.
Yeah, because
and
7-liter V8.
Like Camaro ZL1 didn't make the list for me, even though as a GM guy, the reason the GT500 did is because that looks iconic. The only difference between a Camaro, like to a normal person, and a ZL1 is like, oh, it has hood vents. Like no one would notice.
Right.
Like obviously, it's a wide body, it has different things. Whatever.
Yeah.
A normal person goes, that one has hood vents, this one doesn't. Whatever. The GT500 looks like a GT500. Like,
it looks insane.
Yeah. So that's why it made the list over the ZL1, even as a diehard GM guy.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because something that I thought would make this list that didn't is a Camaro Z28, the modern one. And
no, because those are not $40,000.
Well, no, I know, but you can find them for decent. Like there are some of them that you can find for like between 50 and 60.
Can you? I was gonna say it was like those are for everything. Every time I've looked, they're 70. So I'm like,
maybe I haven't looked in a while, but that's something I thought might make it, but I didn't know if it was going to be a cusp.
Even so,
carbon ceramic brakes.
Even so, Greg was like, I'm shocked the car that didn't fit within the rules isn't on this list.
I'm shocked there's not an R8.
You expanded your list to about $70,000. There's a lot of cars you didn't mention.
Right, but if you consider,
why didn't you put a brand new GTR Nismo on here? Get out of here!
Oh crap! You're right. I did. That was just an oversight on my side.
Where's my Rolls Royce Ghost?
Sports car, you knucklehead. No, another reason why I thought this was such a really cool exercise, and it's something we haven't really touched on. So if you go and you look at the average purchase price for a new car, and what it is, it's right in this sort of ballpark. So it's
45.
You can have something, or you can have one of these 10 cars that.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way: some of them I would absolutely, if I had the financial means, go and buy. The rest of them, if I had one in my garage, I would fight you to defend it. Because like they're just good cars,
yes,
and everything like that. And no, I mean, I think this was a good one, gents.
Yes,
but no, and it's,
well, like I said, guys, I'm available. I've got all this space over here.
Well, maybe
yes, we're just gonna have you recurring monthly, if that's okay.
Yeah, first Wednesday of every month.
Like I said, I don't need to necessarily. Ringlead the subject here. I mean, we can talk about whatever.
No, well, it was funny, like because when we were talking about this the last time, it was just one of those things that clicked in my head. When I first even asked you to come back, it was, oh, I'll just have him on, do a normal show, just have a third host. But then inspiration sort of struck, and I think because like I don't know, between Greg looking to get a new sports car. His stuck in the Pacific Northwest Volvo 240 having life again,
which is coming home soon, thank God.
Like between those two topics, I'm like genuinely excited. Like just not because like, oh my God, my friend's getting a cool car.
Guys, spoiler, he's gonna get an F-Type. That was it. I did a lot of stuff. We had a good talk.
Maybe you should just do a YouTube video on why the F-Type is going to depreciate like a stone.
I know. Well, that's why I didn't make the list. It's because like so far, even the SVR has been like not necessarily a great invest. Now, there's no telling, but there's a reason to make the list. It's a great car. I love them. But it's just funny that he seems to be going F-Type, F-Type.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, obviously, I'm like really like hyped up on the F-Type, and I've been tracking their prices since literally they came out. They have never dipped below $38,000 online. I've never seen one that wasn't crashed or had a really sordid history. That like a decent but high mileage, obviously, like you're going to get different mileages on things. I've never seen a good one, a traditionally what you would define as a good car, for under $38,000. And it's weird because it's a modern British GT car that has a big V8 engine, and you think, oh, well, man, that must have tanked. And yes, from initial values, obviously that did tank, but a lot like the V8 Vantage, they never got below, like Vantage is like decent. Vantage never got below like 30, 35.
True.
F-Types have never gone below that high 30s, low 40s range, which is weird to me because I'm like, that's a modern car. You'd think that would continue to go down, but they've bottomed for the better part of like 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's maybe that's not a horrible buy at that point.
And maybe that's where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's their bottom forever. The market could tank tomorrow, and I don't know, but it's an interesting case of a modern sports car, and honestly, for me, like a forgotten modern sports car, because you look at like best modern sports cars for under $50K, it makes like one list out of 30 of them. No one puts it on the list, which I again like the Elise. I think it's kind of interesting that like no one really puts it up there. But that's my 60-second speech for why the F-Type is interesting and cool. But you've given me a lot to think about, quite honestly. Like it's not just like I'm gonna go get an F-Type. Like there's
I know, it's just
no, I know, but it's one of those things where I'm just like those are legitimately interesting cars that I never would have thought of. And again, that's why I like having diversity of thought, because you're just like, oh, it's got to be an F-Type, or it's got to be a GT350, or it's got to be a C6 Corvette. But there are so many other things out there that you can get for that price range that are interesting and cool that like I didn't think of, or Chad didn't think of, or you didn't think of, that we could all bounce off each other. Like, I love that, and that's why we have these conversations. That's why I love doing this.
You just want a boosted 5-liter. I get it.
I mean, also yes. I mean, counterpoint: who doesn't?
That's
Everyone wants a boosted 5-liter. Anything.
Oh my gosh. But no, this is fun because, like I said, genuinely excited to just talk cars. Like, ooh, would I own that? And like, different from you guys when you look at a car. Like, I just remember thinking this while Greg was going on about, tasteful mods to the C6 Z06, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, and I was like, cam, headers, intake manifold. Like, the whole, because that's just where
it's the normal host of mods.
That's like kind of where that's where Greg and I differ. We were talking kind of about this off stream earlier, but like Greg has more of an aesthetic eye, and the one body part for my car has been sitting in my garage for over a year, waiting to be installed.
What body part is it? It's leg?
It's a carbon fiber roof.
Oh, okay.
Leg. Is it a torso?
Yeah. It's like,
no, I keep those in the attic.
Is it its femur?
What mannequin are you hiding, weirdo?
I know. I'm joking. I know what you meant by body part.
No.
The one body part.
I know.
I have a finger laying for my Mustang in the garage.
I have the severed arm of the former owner just lying waiting to get reunited. No. To be 100% honest, I should have paused and said, what? But I didn't hear what you said, so I'm like, I'll just go with it. Hosting 101.
Even better.
But no, it's just really cool to have that different mindset, a different thought process that, first and foremost, pretty much every single one of my cars, the IS300 notwithstanding, and the M3 just because it was, God damn it, I just want to get to stage 0. But it was, the C30 power first, the Mustang power first, even though the previous owner had put better suspension on it, and it had a performance package, so it had the big brakes, the strut bracing, and all that. So I knew I had the braking to keep up with the power, and I knew I had suspension and stuff. But it's like, ooh, it's like the shiny thing in the bin, right? It's I should do power, Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those, but it's a cool perspective. I'm actually really excited to see what Greg ends up going with.
Hey, this is a reverse. There we
Yeah.
See what Greg goes with. Just because I like cool cars, and he's gonna, theoretically speaking, come summertime, he'll have 2 more cool cars. So
That's true. We'll have to see what happens with that 240, which is going to be probably a topic of conversation for next week.
yeah, you should have it shipped into Kansas so we can go out and see Elliott and then drive it back.
Hey, I like that idea.
That's a good idea.
It
I like
also
that.
might be cheaper. Also, assuredly cheaper.
Also true.
And then road trip it, video it.
Yes.
Profit. But on that one,
Yeah.
guys, I think that's
VR
where
240 road trip.
I think that's where we're gonna wrap for the evening. Elliott, thank you again so much for being on the show.
Dude, thank you guys for having me.
Looking forward to doing this again. But
Please go follow
Anytime.
Elliott at all of his socials at Elliott Alvis. Just search his name and he will come up literally everywhere.
I hope. We'll see. But thank you guys for having me. It's seriously a blast.
Yes.
Gregson, I hope I gave you some food for thought.
You did.
And yeah, I I'll see you guys hopefully on the next podcast we get to do.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. You're coming back many times, my friend.
Okay.
Yep.
Love you guys,
Locked in. Binding.
Locked in. Let's go.
70
All right,
show
see you guys.
contract. Let's go.
Yes.
But again, thank you so much. But thank you to Elliott. I've been Chad. That's Greg over there, and we will catch you guys next week.